Well, I'm now joined in the studio by our international affairs editor, Doug Herbert. Thank you for joining us. Both the U.S. and Europe have expressed their support for Algerians to protest.
Yeah, and they've done so in a rather bland manner. And I say that when you look at you can almost see it as hypocritical. When you look at what's going on in Venezuela right now, and you see this diehard, extremely enthusiastic backing of the Venezuelan protesters against the government of Nicolás Maduro, the U.S. throwing its support rock solidly behind them, and the Europeans following in tow, then you see the reactions with regard to what's happening in Algeria, where you have very similar situations. Protesters making very similar demands for a change in their leadership, for the current leader to go and have their right to basically choose their own leaders. What's the U.S. saying? Well, the U.S. in its bland statement, it was from the State Department, saying the U.S. supports the right of the Algerian people to peacefully assemble. It's monitoring the protests. In diplomatic language, that's about as non-committal as you can get. It's almost non-language, non-speak. And the European Union is going even not even as far as that. They're not even saying Algerian people specifically. The European Commission, through its spokesperson, recognizes the right to peacefully assemble, which is, really, what is it really saying? It's extremely vague language. So you could say that neither the EU or the US, no, obviously they're not throwing their support rock solidly behind Bouteflika, but what we're seeing here is the dilemma. What's going on here? What's going on is that obviously Algeria has long been, and we saw this with Egypt earlier, in the paradigm of diplomacy with the West, it's been a strategic ally, and I put that in quotes, in the fight against terrorism, in the fight to curb terrorism, especially in that area of Africa called the Sahel region where France has troops. So it all sort of is lumped there, and right now they've been putting more of the emphasis on ensuring that security. Doesn't mean they're ignoring the protests, doesn't mean they're not supporting the Algerian people, but they're between a rock and a hard place, and that's why we're seeing such sort of bland, as I see it, diplomatic statements.
And now, more specifically, France is in a very delicate position, as often when dealing with Algeria.
Absolutely. The French statement was almost less committal than the EU and US statements, if you will. They used the note that they have pris note in French, which literally means they have taken note of what is going on. They've noted it. Well, that's great. Where do they go from there? They basically say that they hope that elections take place, quote, under good conditions, and that they support the right of Algerians to choose their leaders and decide their own future. Sort of bland as well. Look, with France, it's a no-brainer. The reason that France has remained, and President Macron notably, pretty silent on this issue and not really throwing its weight behind one side or the other, or not fully behind the Algerian protesters, as a lot of people would like France perhaps to do, is because Algeria is, and I'll use the word again, strategic ally. France, and Macron in particular, a lot of their policies are based around Algeria as a partner in the fight against terrorism in that region of the Sahel region of Africa, coming against a backdrop of fears of an influx of migrants from that region. So by supporting the regime and its battles against terrorism, they're presumably also curbing a potential migrant influx. It all gets very complicated there, but some people say that it's very similar to what we saw with Egypt, in the name of stability, supporting a regime that most of the street in Algeria, by all accounts, doesn't seem to support anymore. So France in a rock and a hard place as well, not being able to really come out and support one side or the other, sort of in a very solid manner.
And now we keep on talking about Bouteflika, but where is he? Do we know anything about his whereabouts and about his health?
Yeah, we do. I mean, he's reportedly, if you're to believe the reports, in a hospital, university hospital in Geneva, in Switzerland right now, where he has been, according once again to reports, since February 24th. So he's been there for a couple of weeks now. It's fascinating because, in Western democracies, it's sort of taken as an article of faith that a leader, especially a president of a country, you regularly give your people, the voters, updates on their health. Not just because we have some sort of, some morbid interest in how they're doing, but it's needed. It's necessary information, especially if you're going to the polls. You want to know if your leaders and candidates are physically fit to assume office in the right physical condition. The health of Bouteflika has long been virtually a state secret in Algeria. They just don't talk about it. So no, we're not seeing doctors coming out before microphones regularly at this hospital saying, as of today, here's the health, this is how the leader is doing. So the Algerians are left to guess from the images they've seen, and they've seen very rarely because he's rarely in public. He does not seem to be in good condition, although his defenders say he may look physically infirm, but he's still lucid. You know what? It's anybody's guess. We don't know.
Doug Herbert, thank you.